All right, we're getting some interesting comments out of Jake Sullivan over at the White House right now concerning the possibility that they are making a continued effort to get Paul Whelan released. He was not part of the prisoner swap, obviously, in this country, but there's a back and forth as to whether it could expand, and maybe we could see such a swap down the road. There's really no way to gauge right now. I want to go to John Kirby, the National Security Council Coordinator for Strategic Communications. John, I don't want to hit you this broadside right here, but it seemed like there's still hope of getting Paul Whelan out. Can you update us?
I don't have any specific things to update today, Neil, but the fact is we are very much focused on getting Paul out. Now, when that could happen and under what circumstances, we haven't figured that out yet, but we're still working very, very hard. And I think in light of the intense negotiations that went on in recent weeks and months, which was up to the very last moment focused on getting both of them home, we've learned some things, and we have a better understanding of Russian expectations here, which will help inform the context with which we pursue these negotiations going forward. But we're very focused on it.
So the bottom line, and I know you've echoed this before, Whelan was never part of the discussions as far as Russia was concerned. You tried to make him, but they ultimately did not want him to be included.
I wouldn't go so far as to say Paul was never part of the discussions. From our perspective, he and Brittany were part of it from the very beginning, as was Mark Fogel. We made outreach to see if we could get Mr. Fogel home too. But in the end, in late last week, it really came down to the only deal that we were going to be able to pursue successfully was Miss Griner for Miss Boot. The Russians simply are treating Paul separately, very, very much distinct from Brittany or any other criminals, if you were.
You know, John, I had a chance to talk to David Whelan, Paul's brother. I know the White House had called him the night before to say that Paul would not be part of this deal. He commended the administration, that is the brother, and is hopeful that something can be done. Is it your sense that something can be done before Christmas?
Something can be done, Neil, but I don't want to get into a prediction of timing. What I can tell you is that we haven't stopped working on Paul's release. Even after we secured the release of Brittany, we were still actively having conversations with the Russians about Paul, and that work continues right now. We're still having those discussions, and if we could get him home tomorrow, we'll do that. I want to be careful not to speculate on a particular time frame.
I want to switch gears on this G7 and that sort of plan how we deal with Ukraine. I did find it interesting over the weekend that Janet Yellen said that the U.S. will continue to help Ukraine and will continue to do this as long as it takes. What does as long as it takes mean?
It means as long as it takes. The president has said the very same thing. The leaders of the G7 in the summertime back in Germany said the same thing in those exact words.
Well, as long as it takes could also be years, right?
Well, we'll see. I mean, it doesn't need to. I mean, quite frankly, the war could end today if Mr. Putin would do the right thing and pull his troops out. Now, obviously, he's shown no inclination to do that. We still believe that that short of that, a diplomatic solution, some sort of negotiated settlement, is probably the next best thing. President Zelensky has said the same thing. He's put forward a formulation of some initiatives that he would like to see factored into a just peace, as he calls it. So we think that that is certainly possible, but in order to get there, both sides have to be willing to sit down, and right now there's just not that inclination to do that. So in the meantime, we got to make sure that we continue to help the Ukrainians succeed on the battlefield so that when that day comes, Neil, Mr. Zelensky can sit down at the table with the leverage and the strength that he needs in that negotiation.
You know, I was just curious, as you know, Vladimir Putin canceled a press conference when he had normally timed to talk about where we stand in the war in Ukraine. And I'm wondering if it had anything to do with troubles that he and Russian soldiers had, particularly in Luhansk, and that the battle is not going well, and that he's grown frustrated. Do you know if there's any truth to any of the above?
No, I don't. We don't know what went into him canceling his end-of-year press conference. We know that he typically relishes this opportunity to wax on at great length with reporters about what he thinks he's accomplished over the previous year. So interesting to see that he canceled it. I don't really know what his visibility is in terms of how badly he's doing on the battlefield, but nevertheless, the Russian forces have continued to do badly on the battlefield. They're making some incremental progress up in the Donbass, but elsewhere around the country, they're continuing to be under pressure and on the defensive lines of position from Ukrainian troops. Again, we're going to keep providing them the security assistance those Ukrainians need to keep pushing the Russians out of their territory, Ukrainian territory, including just Friday, you saw another $275 million by this administration to assist with everything from air defense to improved artillery.
You know, if I can go back to Victor Boot, the so-called merchant of death, who was involved in this Griner swap,
Sure.
I read one thing interesting, that the administration was determined to continue following him, that he does anything nefarious. This is my leap here. I guess you're going to keep eyes on him. How are you going to do that? And is that a message that if he returns to arms dealing, selling, any of that, you'll try again for him?
Yeah, we said it very clearly. Mr. Boot is now a free man. He has some choices to make. If he chooses to get back into his old line of work, then the United States is going to do what we have to do to hold him accountable and protect ourselves. There was a national security assessment done before this exchange, as is always done. And the belief was that whatever risk to our national security by releasing Mr. Boot 6 years early, and that's important to note too, Neil, he wasn't serving a life sentence. He was going to be a free man in 6 years anyway, but that any potential risk was a risk that we could manage, and we will stay vigilant. We will watch. We will determine if our security interests are put at risk by Mr. Boot. We'll do what we have to do to protect ourselves.
There had been talk, and the Wall Street Journal mentioned it last week, that a future swap might involve something akin to what we saw during the Obama administration, where there would be a large group swap for a very large group. It's unwieldy, hard to track, but it would be a way to sort of spread the wealth. In other words, to satisfy, in this case, what the Russians want, presumably other entities that we want. Is the administration open to something that was done under the Obama administration? A large prisoner swap, but this one's substantial.
The focus right now is on Mr. Whelan and getting him home. And because we now know just how stringently the Russians consider him differently because of these espionage charges that they've levied against him, we're, I think, a little bit better informed going forward on what it would take to get him home. I won't rule in or rule out anything, certainly not here on national TV, about what the negotiation tactics might be. We want to keep those as private as we can so that we can have a chance at success. I'll just tell you that we go into this next phase much more informed by Russian expectations, and we're going to keep working everything we can to get him home. And we won't be afraid to be innovative and creative in thinking that through.
John, while I have you here as well, Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor, has addressed this Title 42 issue expiring within days and the back and forth about what the administration can do. I want you to respond to this. This is sound just coming in.
Title 42 is expiring. Do you see a national security, are there national security concerns over the Title 42 expiration?
So the team has been working very hard to ensure that we are taking steps to be able to manage the expiration of Title 42 and to put in place a process that will be orderly and humane. And we believe that in doing so, we can protect our national security concerns. That is a process that others can speak to better than I can, but from my perspective, the issues related to ensuring an orderly, humane migration process at the border are being persistently and constantly addressed through the interagency process, and we are working through what the procedures will be in place at the moment of expiration on the 21st.
Does the U.S. government have any sense of how many people are coming across that there is no visibility on? How many people are crossing that you have no idea who they are?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question.
How many people crossing the border that the U.S. government has no idea, like estimates of how many people crossing aren't giving their name, aren't giving IDs, aren't able to verify who they are?
So we do have estimates of how many encounters there are at the border on a daily basis. We have processes and procedures in place to identify those individuals, to process them in an orderly fashion, and then to do what is appropriate based on that processing. And we have believed that that system is a system that does an effective job of being able to determine who is coming across the border and what the right way to deal with their case is.
It's hard to parse through all of that, John. I'm sorry for jumping all of this on you, unannounced here, but it does sound to me that expiration is not going to be extended. I mean, Title 42 goes away in a little more than 11 days. It's gone. It's not being extended. Am I right to read it that way?
Well, I think Mr. Sullivan was making it clear that regardless of the deadline, that we're gonna make sure that going forward, that we've got the systems and processes in place to do the right thing for border security and for appropriate legal immigration. I don't want to get ahead of where we are right now here on the 12th of December, but what Mr. Sullivan was trying to stress is that we are thinking it through ourselves, and we will make sure that when Title 42 expires, that we'll be ready to protect our national security, but also to do immigration, as he said, in a humane and orderly fashion.
But it will expire. Title 42 will expire.
Again, I'm not going to get ahead of where we are right now here on the 12th, Neil, but we are thinking through what that expiration would mean for an orderly, legal, humane process of managing immigration across that border. And I would note, he talked about processes there. I mean, we still have military troops down there assisting our border agents, doing the kinds of things that help them, our Border Patrol agents, have greater visibility as to what's going on at the border, whether that's surveillance and more logistical support. All that's still happening too.
You seem concerned about this. It's clear that Jake Sullivan wanted to clarify that the administration is concerned about this. I don't want to be rude here, John. Is the president? He doesn't visit, doesn't talk about it. Says there are bigger issues than what's going on there. What's going on with him?
Oh, of course, the president knows how important border security is, and he gets routine briefings on this. I mean, he's kept up to speed.
He rarely talks about it,
He
John.
understands.
He rarely talks about it.
The number of times he talks about it doesn't convey how important he knows the issue is. Certainly to the border states as well as the people that live there.
He doesn't think that it's a pressing issue for the time being. That there are far more pressing issues.
The president understands the importance of border security. I can assure you of that.
All right, we shall see. John Kirby, thank you very, very much. Good seeing you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.